The weight of 10,000 worlds commander Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Fleet flagship Indomitable, watching the massive alien ships appear in space around Earth. The vessels were unlike anything humanity had ever built. They looked like floating cities made of dark metal, each one bigger than Earth's largest space stations. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Hannah Park at the communications station. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. Daeho nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared made everyone on the bridge step back. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow. Its eyes were completely black, and when it spoke, its voice echoed strangely. "I am Overlord Vextar of the Dominion Council," the alien said. "Your species will now join the hegemony of chains. You have one choice to make." Daeho stepped forward. "What choice is that?" "Submit completely or die completely. There is no middle path." The alien waved its hand, and the screen filled with images. Dead planets floating in space. Cities turned to ash. Entire star systems reduced to nothing but rocks and dust. These worlds chose to fight. Vexatar continued. 10,407 civilizations have joined the hegemony. None have ever broken free. You are number 10,408. Down in the science labs, Dr. So-Young Park studied recordings of the alien delegation. Something bothered her about what she saw. She had spent her life studying different forms of life, and these aliens felt wrong somehow. She called up genetic scans from the meeting. The results made her frown. Every alien in the delegation showed signs of artificial changes to their DNA. Not just one or two modifications, but hundreds of them. Their entire genetic structure had been rebuilt. "This isn't natural evolution," she whispered to herself. "Someone changed them, changed everything about them." Captain Minho Lee was leading a small team in secret to gather information about the alien fleet. They used hidden sensors to scan the massive ships surrounding Earth. What they found was disturbing. "Look at this," said Specialist Yoon Seo Kim, pointing at her screen. "These ships aren't just military vessels. They're carrying something else." Minho studied the data. "What am I looking at?" "Broadcast equipment. Powerful transmitters aimed at the planet. They're not just here to threaten us. They're already doing something to us." The captain felt cold. "What kind of something?" Yunseo's face was pale. "I don't know. But these signals are reaching every major city on Earth. Whatever they're broadcasting, everyone is hearing it." In the capital city, President Ji-Woo Choi sat in an emergency meeting with world leaders. The alien ultimatum was clear, but the choice felt impossible. Fight and die, or surrender and live as slaves. "How long do we have?" asked Prime Minister Chen Wei from the Asian Federation. President Choi looked at the reports in front of her. "They want an answer in 72 hours. After that, they say they'll make the choice for us." "And if we surrender?" asked President Maria Santos from South America. "They've sent us their terms," Choi replied, her voice heavy. "Complete integration into their system. They'll change our education, our laws, our culture. They say it will take 3 generations to complete the process." Around the table, the leaders of Earth looked at each other. They had built a world free from war, a planet where humans worked together. Now they faced a choice that could end everything they had worked for. Dr. So-Young Park burst into the meeting room, carrying a tablet filled with data. "Madam President, you need to see this," she said, breathing hard from running. "I've been studying the aliens. They're not conquerors. They're victims." The room fell silent. President Choi gestured for her to continue. "Every alien species in their fleet has been genetically modified. Not just changed, but completely rebuilt. Their brains, their emotions, even their basic instincts have been altered. They're not evil. They're programmed." "Programmed to do what?" asked President Santos. "To spread their condition to others. They believe down to their very core that freedom is dangerous, that independence leads to suffering. They're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to save us from ourselves. The weight of this revelation settled over the room. These weren't monsters from space. They were the remains of civilizations like Earth, changed into something that no longer remembered what freedom meant. Commander Dae-ho Kim received new orders from Earth Command. Prepare for surrender. The decision had been made by every government on Earth. Humanity would submit to save itself from extinction. As he watched the alien ships move into position around Earth's major cities, Dae-ho thought about his daughter. She was only 8 years old. Would she remember what Earth was like before the aliens came? Would his grandchildren even know that humans had once been free? "Sir," Lieutenant Hannah Park said quietly. "Incoming message from the alien fleet." Overlord Vextar appeared on screen. Again, but this time he seemed almost sad. "Your leaders have chosen wisely," the alien said. "The integration will begin immediately. Do not fear the changes that come. You will understand in time that freedom is an illusion that causes only pain." The transmission ended, and smaller alien ships began landing in cities around the world. The occupation of Earth had begun. Dr. So-Young Park stood at her laboratory window, watching alien transports fly over the city. She had hidden copies of all her research about human genetics and brain patterns. Something told her this information would be important someday. Captain Min-ho Lee gathered his most trusted soldiers in a secret meeting. "The war isn't over," he told them. "It's just beginning. But we can't fight them with ships and guns. We need to be smarter than that." "What do you mean, sir?" asked Sergeant Dal Ho-yoon. "We need to learn everything we can about how they control people, and we need to make sure some humans remember who we really are." President Ji-woo Choi signed the Articles of Submission in a ceremony broadcast across the world. As she put her name on the document that surrendered Earth's independence, she whispered something too quiet for the cameras to hear. "Forgive us. And remember us." The alien ships settled into orbit around Earth like chains around a prisoner. The free world was free no more. But in hidden places, some humans began to plan for a day when those chains might be broken. The occupation of Earth was complete. The real fight for humanity's soul was about to begin. Threads of silver, hearts of lead 5 years had passed since Earth surrendered to the hegemony. Dr. Hye-jin Nam worked in her hidden laboratory deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, studying brain scans of humans who had gone through the cultural education programs. The results terrified her. "Look at this," she said to her assistant, Dr. Taemin Cho. "The hippocampus has shrunk by 15%. The areas that control curiosity and independent thinking are becoming smaller." Taemin studied the scans. "How is this possible?" The alien said the programs were just teaching sessions. "They're not just teaching," Hye-jin replied. "They're rewiring our brains, making us physically unable to rebel." Above them, the world had changed. Cities looked cleaner and more organized. Crime had dropped to almost nothing. People seemed happier, calmer, but they also seemed empty. Lieutenant Colonel Woo Jin Kang lived in an underwater base with 50 other soldiers who had refused to join the new integrated defense force. Through hidden cameras, they watched the human settlements on Mars and Europa. "Show me the latest footage from Mars Colony," Woo Jin said to technician Subin Park. The screen showed humans and aliens working together in perfect harmony. Everyone wore the same style of clothing. Everyone moved with the same calm, measured pace. No one argued. No one laughed too loudly. No one seemed to want anything beyond their assigned tasks. "They look happy," Subin said quietly. "Do they?" Woo Jin asked. "Or do they look drugged?" In the new learning centers across Earth, teacher Yun-ha Shin tried to do her job while watching the children change. The human kids who had been born after the surrender were different from older children. They asked fewer questions. They accepted everything they were told without argument. "Miss Shin," said 8-year-old Jin Young Lee, one of her human students. Why do some of the older kids seem angry all the time? Yunha looked at the boy. His question sounded genuine, but there was something flat about his voice. Something missing. What do you mean by angry? She asked. They want things to be different. But everything is perfect now. The hegemony has made everything peaceful and good. Why would they want it to be different? Sitting next to Jin Young was a young alien named Zixtal from the Krillian species. Both children had the same calm expression, the same lack of passion in their voices. They were becoming identical despite being from different worlds. Captain Sujin Bei stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Harmony, which now flew under hegemony command. Her orders were to help capture the last free human settlements hiding in the asteroid belt. Captain, said her communications officer, Lieutenant Bo Young Kim, the rebels are asking to speak with you directly. Sujin's stomach twisted. She knew some of those rebels. They had served together before the surrender. Now she was hunting them like criminals. Put them through, she said. The face that appeared on screen belonged to Commander Hyun-Soo Park, her former wingmate. Sujin, he said, his voice full of sadness. Please don't do this. You know this isn't right. The resistance is over, Hyun-Soo, Sujin replied, following her script. The hegemony has brought peace to the galaxy. Join us, and you'll understand. Listen to yourself, Hyun-Soo said. Those aren't your words. That's not how you used to talk. Sujin felt something stir in her mind, like trying to remember a dream. For a moment, she almost remembered who she used to be. Then the feeling faded, replaced by calm certainty. Surrender now, and your people will be treated well, she said. Deep in the underground research facility, Dr. Dongwoo Yang, a former physicist, made a breakthrough. He had been studying the alien broadcast signals that filled Earth's atmosphere. I've found something, he announced to his team of hidden researchers. The signals aren't random. They're coordinates. Coordinates to what? Asked Dr. Young-Ho Kim. A facility. Somewhere beyond Neptune. The signals all point to the same location. Dr. Mi-sun Lee, who had been monitoring alien communications, looked up from her work. I've been tracking hegemony supply ships. They make regular trips to that same area. Whatever is out there, it's important to them. Dongwoo felt excitement for the first time in years. We need to find out what they're hiding. The team began planning a secret mission to investigate the mysterious facility. They knew it would be dangerous, but they also knew they needed answers about how the hegemony controlled so many worlds. Meanwhile, teacher Yoon-Ha Shin made her own disturbing discovery. She had been comparing educational materials from different alien species in the hegemony. All of them learned the same basic lessons. Obedience is happiness. Questions lead to chaos. Individual desires cause suffering. But hidden in the older textbooks, she found traces of what these species used to be like. The warrior poets of Althan VII had once written epic songs about freedom and adventure. The Krillians had been master engineers who built impossible machines for the joy of creation. All of that was gone now, erased and replaced with the same empty contentment. They don't just conquer civilizations, Yunha whispered to herself. They erase them. Dr. Hye-jin Nam's research was revealing the full scope of the hegemony's control. The brain modifications weren't just making humans obedient. They were making them into willing tools for conquering other humans. The people who go through the complete program, she explained to her hidden team, they don't just accept hegemony rule, they actively work to spread it. They believe they're helping others by forcing them to submit. This explained why Captain Sujin Bei and others like her were so effective at hunting down rebels. They weren't just following orders, they genuinely believed they were saving the rebels from themselves. Lieutenant Colonel Woo Jin Kang received disturbing news from his spies in the surface world. The hegemony was planning something big. Ships were gathering at the edge of the solar system. Important alien officials were arriving on Earth. Something's coming, he told his team. Something That's going to change the game. Dr. Dongwu Yang's team had almost finished preparing for their secret mission to the facility beyond Neptune. They had stolen a small ship and modified it to avoid detection. But as they made final preparations, they received an encrypted message from an unexpected source. The message was from Dr. So-Young Park, the scientist who had first discovered the truth about the aliens. She had been forced to work for the hegemony, but she had been secretly documenting everything she learned. "The facility you're planning to investigate," her message said, "it's not just a research station. It's a library, a place where they keep records of every civilization they've conquered, including detailed information about how to control each species." The message continued. "But there's something else, something the hegemony doesn't want anyone to know. Some of the conquered species came close to breaking free, very close. Their methods are stored in that facility too." Dr. Dongwu Yang looked at his team. The mission had just become much more important. They weren't just going to spy on the aliens, they were going to find the secrets of resistance itself. As the stolen ship prepared to launch into the darkness, beyond Neptune, the team members thought about what they might find. The answers to humanity's freedom might be waiting in that hidden facility, or they might find only more evidence of the hegemony's power. Either way, they had to try, because if they didn't, humanity would slowly fade away, becoming just another empty, obedient species in the hegemony's vast collection of conquered worlds. Echoes of the fallen Dr. Dongwu Yang's stolen ship approached the hidden facility beyond Neptune. The structure was massive, built into an asteroid that had been completely hollowed out. Strange energy fields surrounded it, making it nearly invisible to normal sensors. "Take us in slowly," Dongwu whispered to pilot Yuri Kim. "If they detect us, this mission is over before it starts." Yuri was the best hacker in the underground resistance. She had modified their ship's systems to mimic hegemony signal patterns. As far as the facility's sensors knew, they were just another supply ship. Demolitions expert Jae-Sung Moon checked his equipment one more time. "If we need to get out fast, I can blow a hole in their security barriers, but it will only work once." They docked with the facility using fake identification codes that Yuri had stolen from hegemony databases. The inside of the station was unlike anything they had ever seen. Corridors stretched for kilometers, filled with storage devices that hummed with alien technology. "This place is huge," whispered team member Kyung-Soo Han. "How are we going to find anything useful?" Yuri plugged her portable computer into a data terminal. "Give me a few minutes. I can map their storage system." While she worked, the team explored the nearby corridors. What they found was disturbing. The walls were covered with displays showing thousands of different alien species. Under each image was a status report. Fully integrated. Resistance eliminated. Cultural adaptation complete. Dongwu stopped at one display that showed a species that looked almost human. The status read, "Total submission achieved, Generation 3. 3. Generations," he muttered. "That's all it takes for them to completely erase a civilization." Yuri called them back to the terminal. "I've found something incredible. This isn't just a storage facility, it's a complete record of every species the hegemony has ever conquered. And I mean everything. Their history, their culture, their biology, even their methods of resistance." She had accessed files showing 10,147 different civilizations. Each file contained detailed information about how the species had fought back, how long they had resisted, and exactly how the hegemony had broken them. "Look at this pattern," Yuri said, pointing at her screen. "Every single species follows the same timeline. Initial resistance lasts 2-5 years. Organized rebellion continues for 10-15 years. Then gradual decline until total submission in 50-80 years. Jae-Sung studied the data. "Every single one?" "Everyone," Yuri confirmed. "Except..." She pulled up a new file and the team gathered around to read it. The file was labeled Species 10848 Humans, Terra. But unlike all the others, this file was marked with warnings and question marks. Resistance patterns unpredictable, Dongwu read aloud. Standard control methods showing reduced effectiveness. Timeline projections unreliable, the file showed. That human resistance was actually growing stronger over time, not weaker. The hegemony's own reports admitted they were confused by this. Yuri accessed deeper files and found something that made everyone stop breathing. The hegemony themselves were not the original conquering force. They were the first conquered species. The Vexthari, she read from an ancient file. Original designation, Independent Republic of Vextar. Conquered by the First Dominion 50,000 years ago. Status, fully converted to expansion agents. The terrible truth became clear. The hegemony had once been free like humanity, but they had been so completely broken by their conquerors that they now believed slavery was natural. They spread their chains to other worlds because they genuinely thought freedom was a disease. Dr. Tae Wan Seo, who had stayed behind on Earth, received the team's transmitted data and began analyzing it immediately. What he found confirmed their worst fears and their greatest hopes. The pattern is clear, he reported to the underground resistance leaders. Every species that the hegemony conquered showed predictable biological and psychological responses to their control methods. But humans are different. He showed them brain scans and genetic analyses. Our neural structure is more chaotic than other species. We have more random connections, more unpredictable emotional responses. What other species see as mental disorder, we call creativity. This chaos was creating interference with the hegemony's control systems. Humans who should have been completely programmed were instead developing resistance to the programming. Captain Kyung-ho Park, working with a team of military analysts, studied the records of species that had come closest to breaking free. 3 civilizations had nearly succeeded in throwing off hegemony control. The warrior poets of Althan's Seventh had united their entire planet in a resistance movement that lasted 200 years. They had even begun freeing other worlds before the hegemony, brought in massive reinforcements. The hive minds of the crystalline reaches had developed technology that could block hegemony mind control. They had created free zones where conquered species could remember who they used to be. The energy beings of the Ghost Nebula had actually succeeded in driving the hegemony completely out of their region of space. They had remained free for over 1,000 years. "What happened to them?" asked Dr. In-Young Lee. Kyung-ho's face was grim. The First Dominion came personally to deal with them. All 3 civilizations were completely destroyed. Not conquered, destroyed. Back at the hidden facility, Dr. So-Young Park made the most important discovery of all. Deep in the biological files, she found detailed analyses of human genetics that the hegemony had been conducting in secret. "They're scared of us," she transmitted to the resistance. "The reports show that human neural patterns are creating cascade failures in their control network. Areas with large human populations are becoming dead zones in their psychic suppression grid." The files revealed that the hegemony was planning something drastic. If they couldn't find a way to control humans within the next year, they would request direct intervention from the First Dominion. "The First Dominion?" Dongwu asked over the communication link. "The original conquerors," So-Young replied. "The ones who broke the hegemony 50,000 years ago. According to these files, they still exist somewhere beyond the galactic core, and they're coming to Earth." The team quickly copied as much data as they could carry and prepared to leave the facility. But as they reached their ship, alarms began blaring throughout the station. "We've been detected," Yuri said, her fingers flying over her computer. "Their security systems just came online." Jae-sung planted explosive charges at key points around the docking bay. "When I blow these, we'll have maybe 2 minutes before they can stop us." As their ship pulled away from the facility, Dongwu looked back at the massive structure. Inside those walls was the complete history of 10,000 conquered civilizations. Stories of courage, resistance, and ultimate defeat. But also something else. Proof that humans were different. Proof that the galaxy's greatest empire was afraid of one small planet. "Set course for Earth," he told Yuri. "We have a war to start." Behind them, the facility's weapons began firing, but they were already too far away. The most important intelligence mission in human history was complete. Now the real fight could begin. The Defiance. Gene Admiral Haewon Choi floated in the command center of the hidden asteroid base New Seoul, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. For 3 years, she had been building a secret network of human resistance cells on dozens of worlds. What she was seeing now amazed her. "Ma'am," said Communications Officer Danby Park, "we're getting signals from the Rigel system. The human settlement there is reporting something strange." Haewon moved to the communication panel. "What kind of strange?" "The Krillian workers in their sector have started asking questions, real questions, about why they have to build the same buildings over and over, about why they are not allowed to design anything new." This was the 15th report like this. In the past month, wherever humans gathered in large numbers, the alien populations around them were beginning to change. They were remembering pieces of who they used to be. Dr. In-Soo Lim worked in a secret laboratory with alien defectors who had escaped from hegemony worlds. His research was revealing the mechanism behind this unexpected effect. "The hegemony's control system requires constant reinforcement," he explained to his team. "They use a galaxy-wide network of broadcast stations called Harmony stations. These stations send out psychic suppression signals every few hours." He showed them a holographic map of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light marked the locations of Harmony stations, creating a web of control that covered every inhabited system. "But humans are creating interference," In-Soo continued. "Our chaotic neural patterns are like static in their signal. Where enough humans gather, we create dead zones in the network." The implications were staggering. Humans weren't just resistant to hegemony control. They were actually disrupting the control of other species. Commander Bo-Ram Han led a joint strike team of humans and alien defectors toward a major Harmony station in the Outer Rim. The station was built into a small moon, its massive transmitters reaching across dozens of star systems. "Remember the plan," Bo-Ram told her diverse crew over the communication system. "We destroy the main transmitter array, then get out fast. We're not trying to hold territory. We just want to give those systems a few hours of freedom." Her team included Krillian engineer Tikval, who had recovered enough of his original personality to feel anger at what had been done to his people. Also with them was Velnara, an ethereal navigator who could pilot ships through hyperspace using pure intuition instead of computer calculations. "Approaching the target," Velnara announced. Her voice carried emotions that ethereals hadn't shown for thousands of years. "I can feel the suppression field from here. It's like a weight pressing down on my mind." The attack was swift and precise. Tikval had designed explosive charges specifically to overload the station's power systems. When they detonated, the massive transmitters went dark for the first time in centuries. Across 17 star systems, the effect was immediate and dramatic. On the factory world of Kethmore, Krillian workers stopped their endless construction projects and began building art instead of just functional structures. On the mining planet Zaltheris, the Silicon Collective refused orders for the first time in their recorded history, but the most amazing change happened on the garden world of Velthara. The ethereal navigators there began to sing. Their ancient songs had been silent for 10,000 years, but now they echoed across the planet as the ethereals remembered their musical heritage. The hegemony's response was swift and brutal. Overlord Vextar ordered immediate retaliation against human settlements on 17 worlds. The executions were broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to other species. But the plan backfired completely. Young Hoon Ryu, working undercover as a diplomatic liaison, watched the broadcasts from the hegemony capital world. Instead of terrorizing other species into submission, the executions triggered something the hegemony had never seen before: sympathy rebellions. "They're making martyrs of us," he reported to the Resistance Network. "Other species are seeing humans die for defending freedom, and they're remembering what freedom means." The Krillian engineers began sabotaging construction projects across the galaxy. Instead of building new hegemony facilities, they started creating hidden meeting places for resistance groups. The ethereal navigators began refusing to pilot ships on missions they considered immoral. Without their navigation abilities, the hegemony's fleet movements became much slower and less coordinated. Most surprisingly, the Silicon Collective began questioning the logic of their orders. These artificial beings had been created by the hegemony to be perfect servants, but exposure to human chaos was teaching them to think for themselves. Dr. So-Young Park, still working within the hegemony system, documented these changes from the inside. What she found terrified the alien leadership. "The contamination is spreading faster than projected," she overheard Overlord Vextar telling his council. "Human neural patterns are creating cascade failures throughout our control matrix. If this continues, we could lose entire sectors." The hegemony tried to isolate human populations, but it was too late. The effect had already spread to too many worlds. Resistance groups were forming on planets that hadn't seen rebellion in thousands of years. On the industrial world of Morgeth, former slaves began destroying the factories they had built. On the agricultural planet Zentar, workers stopped sending food shipments to hegemony worlds and started feeding resistance movements instead. Admiral Heywan Choi received reports of these uprisings with mixed emotions. She was proud that humanity was inspiring others to fight, but she also knew what was coming next. "The First Dominion fleet has been detected at the Galactic Edge," her intelligence officer reported. "Estimated arrival at Earth in 6 months. The ancient enemy was finally coming. The beings who had broken the hegemony 50,000 years ago were now coming to personally deal with the human problem. But humanity was no longer alone. Across the galaxy, species that had been slaves for millennia were remembering how to fight. The Krillians offered their engineering expertise. The Ethereals provided navigation for resistance fleets. Even some members of the Silicon Collective began secretly helping rebel groups. Young Hoon Ryu established communication with resistance leaders from dozens of species. For the first time in galactic history, conquered peoples were working together against their oppressors. "We have something the hegemony never expected," he reported to Admiral Heywan Choi. "We have allies who remember what it means to be free." The hegemony's perfect order was falling apart. Their 50,000-year reign of absolute control was cracking, as species across the galaxy rediscovered their capacity for resistance. But the real test was still coming. The First Dominion possessed power beyond anything the galaxy had seen. They could manipulate reality itself, bending the laws of physics to their will. Commander Bo-Ram Han gathered her expanded strike force for another mission. Now her team included warriors from 6 different species, all united by their desire for freedom. "The hegemony is calling in their masters," she told them. "So we need to be ready for the fight of our lives." As her diverse crew prepared their weapons and ships, Bo-Ram looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, ancient beings of immense power were coming to Earth. They expected to find a single rebellious planet that could be easily crushed. Instead, they would find a galaxy that had remembered how to say no. The chains that had bound 10,000 worlds for 50,000 years were finally beginning to break. But breaking them completely would require a sacrifice that none of them could yet imagine: the Shattered Crown. The First Dominion fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a nightmare made real. Their ships were not built from metal or any material that human science could recognize. They seemed to be made from crystallized space itself, bending light and gravity around them as they moved. Fleet Admiral Sang-Wook Kim stood on the bridge of the human flagship Liberation, watching the enemy approach. Around him, the largest fleet in human history prepared for battle. But they were not alone. Ships from dozens of freed species had come to defend Earth. "Enemy fleet composition is unlike anything we've seen," reported Tactical Officer Min Jung-yu. "Our sensors can barely detect them. It's like they're only partially in our reality." The communication channels filled with reports from across the galaxy. The First Dominion wasn't just attacking Earth. They were simultaneously striking at every world where resistance had taken hold. Dr. Yejin Cho worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the science vessel Discovery. She had been studying captured First Dominion technology for months, trying to understand how beings could manipulate the basic forces of reality. "They're not using technology as we understand it," she explained to her research team over the communication system. "They've somehow merged their consciousness with the fundamental forces of the universe. They don't build weapons. They are weapons." Her analysis revealed the terrible truth about the First Dominion. Millions of years ago, they had transcended physical existence by consuming the mental energy of entire civilizations. Every enslaved species fed their cosmic power, making them stronger with each conquest. "The galaxy isn't just their territory," Yejin transmitted to the fleet commanders. "It's their food source." Master Engineer Hyun-woo's son had been working around the clock to develop weapons that could fight beings who could rewrite reality. His breakthrough came from studying human neural patterns and their effect on hegemony control systems. "Chaos disrupts their power," he announced over the tactical network. "Their reality manipulation requires perfect order, absolute predictability. Human creativity, our irrationality, our capacity for hope in hopeless situations. It creates quantum interference that limits their abilities." Based on this discovery, human engineers had built weapons that projected chaos fields, concentrated bursts of random energy that could disrupt the First Dominion's reality manipulation. General Mi Young Kim commanded the defense of the Sol system while coordinating with resistance forces across the galaxy. The battle was unlike anything in recorded history. Traditional weapons were useless against enemies who could simply will them out of existence. "Chaos field generators to maximum power," she ordered. "All ships, maintain random flight patterns. Don't let them predict your movements." The human fleet danced through space like a swarm of insects, using unpredictability as their only shield against cosmic gods. Some ships were destroyed when First Dominion vessels simply made them cease to exist, but others survived because their pilots made choices so random that even reality benders couldn't anticipate them. Dr. Jun-Ho Oh led teams of scientists and engineers from multiple species in developing new weapons during the battle itself. Krillian engineers built devices that generated pure chaos. Ethereal navigators used their intuition to guide weapons that flew in patterns too random for the First Dominion to counter. "We're not trying to overpower them," Jun-Ho explained to his diverse team. "We're trying to confuse them, make them doubt their own certainty." Captain Sung-Min Yu led a series of desperate suicide missions against the massive control nodes that coordinated First Dominion power across the galaxy. These structures existed partially outside normal space, making them nearly impossible to attack. "Remember," he told his volunteer crews, "we're not just destroying targets. We're saving the minds of every enslaved being in the galaxy." His ships used experimental drives that could shift briefly into the same dimensional space as the control nodes. Most of the crews didn't survive the transition, but their sacrifices began disrupting the First Dominion's ability to coordinate their reality manipulation. The turning point came when Commander Jin-A Kwan made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying the First Dominion's behavior patterns and noticed something crucial. "They're not gods," she announced over the emergency command channel. "They're prisoners." Her analysis showed that the First Dominion had become so dependent on their reality manipulation abilities that they had lost the capacity for genuine choice. They could reshape the universe, but they could only do it in predictable, orderly ways. "They've forgotten how to be random," Jin-A realized. "They've made themselves perfect, and that perfection is their weakness." Acting on this insight, Jin-A piloted her ship Defiance directly toward the largest First Dominion vessel. But instead of attacking it with weapons, she began broadcasting something much more powerful, the concept of individual choice. Her ship's communication array transmitted every human decision made during the battle, every moment when a pilot chose to turn left instead of right, every split second when a gunner decided to fire early instead of waiting, every instant when someone chose hope over despair. The psychic shockwave of pure free will rippled across the galaxy at faster-than-light speed. For the first time in millions of years, the First Dominion experienced something they had forgotten: uncertainty. On enslaved worlds across the galaxy, beings suddenly remembered what it felt like to make a choice. The hegemony's control systems, already weakened by human interference, collapsed completely as billions of minds simultaneously decided to be free. The First Dominion fleet began to retreat, their perfect coordination shattered by the introduction of chaos into their ordered existence. They had never faced an enemy that fought with randomness itself as a weapon, but their retreat came at a terrible cost. Jin'e's ship was destroyed in the psychic backlash of her broadcast. Her sacrifice had broken the chains of slavery that had bound the galaxy for 50,000 years, but she would never see the freedom she had died to create. Admiral Sang-Wook Kim watched the First Dominion ships disappear into hyperspace, heading back toward the galactic core. The immediate battle was won, but he knew this wasn't the end. "Damage report," he called out. "Heavy losses across all fleets," reported Communications Officer Dae-Yun Park. "But, sir, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Enslaved worlds are declaring independence. The hegemony's control structure is collapsing everywhere." In her laboratory, Dr. Ye-Jin Cho monitored the retreat of the First Dominion fleet. Her sensors detected massive energy buildups in their ships as they fled. "They're not giving up," she warned the fleet commanders. "They're regrouping, building something. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be bigger than anything we've faced." The First Dominion had ruled the galaxy through perfect order for millions of years. They had never been defeated, never been forced to retreat. Now they faced something they didn't understand: beings who fought with chaos itself. As the human fleet tended to its wounded and counted its dead, messages poured in from liberated worlds. The Krillians were already building new technologies they had only dreamed of for thousands of years. The ethereals were composing songs that hadn't been heard since before their enslavement. The Silicon Collective was experiencing emotions for the first time in their existence. But in the depths of space, beyond the galactic core, the First Dominion was preparing their final solution. If they couldn't rule a chaotic galaxy, they would make chaos itself impossible. The real war was just beginning. From ashes, new stars rise. 6 months after the First Dominion's retreat, the galaxy was in chaos, but it was the chaos of freedom, not oppression. Chancellor Dong-Hyun Park stood in the newly built Galactic Liberation Council chambers, looking at representatives from thousands of worlds who were learning to govern themselves for the first time in millennia. "The situation on Velthara is getting worse," reported Ambassador Yuna Lee. "The ethereals there are so overwhelmed by their returned emotions that they can't make basic decisions. Half of them are crying constantly, and the other half are too afraid to leave their homes." Similar reports came from across the galaxy. Some species, freed after so long in slavery, were begging for new masters. Others had descended into civil wars as different groups remembered conflicting versions of their ancient cultures. The hegemony's infrastructure was collapsing, causing food shortages and system failures on thousands of worlds. "Freedom is harder than slavery," Dong-Hyun said quietly to his aide, Secretary Jin Woo-baek. "The hegemony knew that. That's why their control worked for so long." Admiral Soo-Jin Lee commanded the joint liberation fleets that were hunting down the remaining hegemony loyalists. Many former slaves still believed that the old order was better than the chaos of freedom. Entire worlds had to be liberated against their will. "We've located another hegemony stronghold in the Outer Rim," reported her intelligence officer, Commander Young-Sik Han. "But the population there is defending their oppressors. They think we're the invaders." It was heartbreaking work. Admiral Sujin often wondered if they were doing the right thing by forcing freedom on people who didn't want it. But then she would remember the children, how different they became when they were allowed to ask questions and dream impossible dreams. Dr. Yeon-Soo Kim led the galaxy's greatest scientific minds in a desperate race against time. Deep space monitoring stations had detected massive energy buildups in the galactic core, where the First Dominion had retreated. "They're building something unprecedented," she explained to the Emergency Council session. "The energy signatures suggest they're attempting to modify the fundamental laws of physics in our galaxy." The discovery of the First Dominion's plan came from captured hegemony records. The ancient beings were constructing something called the Genesis Protocol, a device that would rewrite the basic rules of reality to make free will physically impossible. "If they succeed," Dr. Yeon-Soo continued, "every being in the galaxy will become incapable of making independent choices. Not just unwilling, actually unable. Free will itself will cease to exist." Captain Ju Young-bae assembled the most diverse crew in galactic history for the mission to stop the Genesis Protocol. Her ship New Dawn carried humans, Krillians, ethereals, Silicon Collective units, and representatives from dozens of other species. "This might be a one-way trip," she told her crew as they prepared to journey to the galactic core. "The First Dominion will throw everything they have at us." Her chief engineer, Krillian Techmore, had been working with human chaos field technology to create something new, devices that could amplify randomness itself. "If chaos is our weapon," he said in his rebuilding mechanical voice, "then let us bring the storm of pure possibility." The journey to the galactic core took weeks, traveling through space that became increasingly strange as they approached the First Dominion stronghold. Reality itself seemed less stable here, with laws of physics that changed randomly from one sector to another. "The fabric of space-time is breaking down," reported Navigation Officer Hai-Rin Choi. "It's like they're practicing for the Genesis Protocol by testing reality modifications on local space." When they finally reached the galactic core, what they found defied description. The First Dominion had built a structure that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was a machine the size of a solar system, made from crystallized time and space itself. "How do we fight something like that?" whispered Communications Officer Seok Jin Park. The answer came from engineer Woo Sung Nam, who had been studying the Genesis Protocol's design. "We can't destroy it from the outside," he announced. "Someone has to go inside and manually override the system." The catch was deadly. Anyone who entered the Genesis facility would be exposed to reality-altering energies that would certainly kill them. The volunteer would have to maintain their sense of self and purpose while their very existence was being rewritten by cosmic forces. Commander Ho-Jin Choi, the youngest human to achieve his rank, stepped forward. "I'll do it." "Ho-Jin, no, Captain," Ju Young protested. "You're barely 25 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you." "That's exactly why I have to go," he replied. "If the Genesis Protocol activates, there won't be any lives ahead of any of us. Not real ones." The final approach to the Genesis facility was a nightmare of shifting reality. Ships designed to fly through space suddenly found themselves swimming through liquid time. Weapons that fired energy beams instead shot out flowers or music or childhood memories. Ho-Jin's small infiltration craft navigated through the chaos using pure intuition rather than instruments. As he entered the facility, reality became even more unstable. He found himself walking through corridors that were sometimes made of light, sometimes of solid thought, sometimes of crystallized emotion. At the heart of the facility, he encountered the First Dominion in their true form. They were no longer physical beings, but patterns of pure order existing within the fabric of reality itself. "You cannot stop the Genesis Protocol," they spoke directly into his mind. "We are order," We are certainty. We are the peace that comes from having no choices to make. Ho-Jin could feel their power trying to rewrite his thoughts, to make him see the logic of their position. For a moment, he almost understood. A galaxy without free will would be a galaxy without suffering, without war, without the pain that comes from making wrong choices. But then he thought about Jin Young Lee, the 8-year-old student who had asked his teacher why the older kids seemed angry. He thought about the ethereals learning to sing again. He thought about Krillians building art instead of just functional structures. "You're afraid?" he said to the First Dominion. "You're afraid of chaos because you've forgotten what it means to grow, to change, to become something new." Instead of trying to destroy the Genesis Protocol, Ho-Jin did something the First Dominion couldn't understand or counter. He forgave them. "I forgive you for being afraid," he said, as his hands worked to override the system. "I forgive you for trying to make everyone else afraid too. I even forgive you for thinking that safety is more important than freedom." The act of genuine forgiveness created a paradox in their perfectly ordered existence. How could order respond to mercy? How could certainty process compassion? The First Dominion's reality manipulation abilities faltered as they tried to compute an impossible equation. In that moment of confusion, Ho-Jin completed the override. The Genesis Protocol collapsed, its energies dissipating harmlessly into space. The First Dominion, faced with the chaos of forgiveness, chose to withdraw beyond the galactic edge rather than face an enemy they couldn't understand. Ho-Jin's body was destroyed by the cosmic energies, but his last transmission reached the liberation. "Fleet, it's done. They're gone. The galaxy is free." President Ye-Yun Moon stood before the First Galactic Assembly, addressing representatives from 10,000 worlds. Some were celebrating their freedom. Others were still struggling to understand what freedom meant. All of them were learning that liberty was not a destination, but a daily choice. "We face challenges that the hegemony never had to deal with," she said. "Crime has returned to some worlds. Wars have broken out between species that remember old grievances. Some of our people are hungry because they're still learning how to manage their own resources." She paused, looking out at the diverse crowd of beings who had never before been allowed to govern themselves. "But our children are asking questions again. Our artists are creating new forms of beauty. Our scientists are discovering things that ordered minds could never imagine. We are free to make mistakes, and free to learn from them." 10 years later, children from dozens of species played together in parks on Earth, learning not just mathematics and science, but something the galaxy had forgotten: how to dream of impossible things and make them real. Admiral Min Ji-yoon maintained, "Watch stations at the galactic edge, not out of fear, but out of responsibility." Humanity had learned that freedom was not just the right to choose, but the duty to protect that right for others. The galaxy was no longer perfect. It was chaotic, unpredictable, often difficult, but it belonged to those who lived in it, and that made all the difference. In schools across thousands of worlds, children learned the story of Commander Ho-Jin Choi and the day the chains were finally broken. They learned that freedom was not free, that it required constant vigilance and sacrifice. But they also learned that some things were worth any price. The galaxy was free, and it would remain free as long as beings remembered the courage to choose their own destiny among the stars.